Scroll down. Boom. Okay, we're back. Next question is about recruiting. That is the big issue, not issue, but like just unknown, how that feels for athletes.
Yeah.
So how was your recruiting process in high school, going to college? Let's talk about the emotions you felt, what you went through, and then how you dealt with some of the hard parts of it.
Well, initially I was really excited when I started being recruited. I was offered my first scholarship. I went to a camp at Texas Tech my freshman year. And that was the first time anybody ever offered me a scholarship. And I was just in complete shock. Like, I just remember being in shock until I got home, because me and one of my teammates from high school went. So I was really, like, honored. Like, somebody actually wants me to come play. Like, I might be able to actually do this. So, you know, letters started rolling in, and that was really cool. So for me, it didn't start till my freshman year of high school when I got on the scene. But then it's exciting. But for me, once the phone call started and the text messages started, it got a bit awkward for me, only because I was like deathly shy. You know, in college.
Introvert?
I'm more of like, I'm not necessarily an introvert, but I'm shy initially on meeting people. I've gotten better. College helped with that.
Yeah.
But, you know, back then, if I had to call somebody, I would have my best friend call. I hated talking on the phone. I was always nervous talking to coaches.
Yep.
You know, I always felt like I wasn't going to say the right thing, so I'd just be silent. And so for me, it was a bit intimidating once they started calling, you know, and texting.
I'm laughing because that's the same way I was. I was like, hello.
Yeah, hello.
School was okay.
Know, I was definitely not one of those players like, oh, coach, so-and-so's calling me, hello, blah, 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 at lunchtime. That was not me.
I was
so,
like, oh.
Yes, shaking.
Anxiety.
Yes, and so then when, you know, I got some of the bigger schools talking to me, that got even more intimidating. It was very exciting at the same time, but it was a bit intimidating for me. So I started to kind of, not back off, but just kind of taper down how much of, I didn't want to feel obligated to talk to them all the time. Because, you know, coaches can be relentless, and they will text you and call you and text you and call your parents and call. So, you know, don't be afraid to, you know, like, you don't have to respond to every single text or every single phone call, because it can be a lot, especially if you're highly recruited and you're getting a lot of phone calls. Like, there's a point where my mom was like, I'm about to shut the phone off. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's 8 o'clock at night. Why are they calling the house?
Don't do it.
So yeah, so that was, but it was cool. Then I think that when I made the decision, when I started to narrow down the schools, it helped me.
Okay.
That was also very nerve-wracking because, you know, by my junior year summer, I had to start telling people no. Mind you, I'm a shy person, so I have to call these coaches now or have a conversation with them and be like, actually, I'm not interested. And, you know, coaches go back and forth with you. They're salespeople.
They don't like hearing no.
They don't like hearing no. And they're very persuasive. So, you know, that was a learning experience for me, trying to stand my ground and say, you know, these are my top 10, these are my top 15, and which is what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to try and convince you.
Yep.
But just help your kid out. If you have somebody like E, that's a former player that's been through it, you know, ask them for some advice and have your kids sit down and talk to them, because it can be a little intimidating when you start having to tell people no and they're going back and forth with you and you're like, but actually no, I don't want to go to a school for whatever reason that is. Then when I got to like my top 5,
which ones were those? Can you remember?
Man.
Or top 3.
Let's see. Well, see, I'd grown up wanting to play for G. When I started watching basketball, I had grown up wanting to play for Coach G.
I was like Elena Beard fan out this world.
I would watch them and my jaw would just be on the ground all the time. Like, I loved watching them play. I'd always want to play for her. So when she switched to Texas, to be quite honest, I had I hadn't really paid too much attention to Texas, to be 100% honest. Living on the West Coast, you know, UCLA, USC, those are the bigger schools on the West Coast. Everybody knew of ASU, all them. So when she called me from Texas, I was like, oh, great, that's awesome. Okay, you're back in my top 10. Never even heard of the school, but sure, you're in my top 10 now. So, Pepperdine, Georgia, Maryland was another school I really wanted to go to. That was the first school that ever pulled the offer back off the table.
Was that Maryland?
Yes, and I was like, oh man, I need to make a decision quick because they're serious about this.
Yeah.
So that was that was like a
Let's get you then.
So, okay, all right. She said, that's okay, we don't want you no more. Okay. She was very nice about it. So let's see, who else? So I had 5 visits scheduled. My first visit was to Texas, and I committed the Sunday I went home.
Cool.
Now that I'm out of school and I can talk about it freely.
Yeah.
I try to tell kids, try to go on as many visits as you can. I think I still would have made the same decision to go to Texas because I fell in love with this place. But I do think that if you have an opportunity to go and let's say you've got 2 or 3 schools that you really like, or maybe you really like this coach and you really like the players at this other school,
Right.
Go and take those visits and don't be too put off when the coach tells you, well, you got to make a decision by this date. I can tell you now, they tell that to everybody. And occasionally they mean it, but usually it's a recruiting tactic to try to get you to just go ahead and commit. If talking to high school players, go on your visits until you really know in your heart, this is where I want to be, and stick with that decision.
And you'll feel it, because you'll be so amped up about recruiting and nervous about I don't want to make the wrong decision. But once you get on campus and you see how coaches treat you, you see how other women's sports are treated. You talk to other sports, volleyball, track, soccer, swimming women.
Talk to academic counselor.
Talk to the academic counselor. Talk to the athletes that you will be playing with. At least 2 or 3 years. Talk to the seniors and ask questions.
Ask the questions that you're nervous to ask.
Ask them what were their problems when they first got their freshman year. What should I be looking forward to in college? And really talk to them. They're gonna tell you. You'll know who's whatever telling the truth and kind of being very transparent, and you'll know who's selling whatever, selling the dream, because they're your what is it? Your recruiter, whatever. What is it
your
called?
main person.
Your main person
that weekend.
But ask questions. Don't be afraid to, and also ask questions to the coaches. Deep questions. And can you elaborate on that? Like, what does that mean? What does that look like for me when I come there and
I think kids.
I got you. I got all these questions.
Yes. Have a list made, whether it be on your phone, on your little notebook. But I think kids got to remember, you also have a decision. Like,
in control.
You are in control of the situation. So if you feel like you're getting out of control, you feel like you're just kind of getting tugged in one way, like, get that control back and ask the questions that you want to ask. For me, for example, a big thing for me was I wanted to go to med school after I graduated. So I was pre-med up until my senior year, and I was like, nah, this isn't for me.
Skirt.
Yeah. But that was after I shadowed the sports medicine doctors here and everything. So, but from the jump, when it got serious, my junior year, started talking to schools and narrowing down, well, if I want to do pre-med, am I able to do that? Because some schools will tell you, well, actually, no, you can't have that degree. And, some schools won't tell you, which is why I say, luckily it wasn't that way for me. So when I came to school, I think my high school coaches actually told me, like, make sure you let them know what you want to do. And so when I talked to Randa, who's like the head academic person at Texas,
loved her,
lifesaver. It was really, she was very open and honest about that it's going to take a lot of work if that's the degree that you want to, if that's the path you want to go along, and had some really good advice. And they brought in the head sports doctor, so that was really good for me to see, okay, they're actually listening to me, and that was that was a big thing. That was like my biggest thing, because growing up, school was always bigger than basketball, always. And I think I just knew, okay, at any point in time, I see other players going down with knee injuries. I saw kids from Vegas that were supposed to, you know, go to big schools, and they would be injured and no scholarships on the table. So it was very, education was always very important to me. So it should be for everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, when it comes to recruiting, you gotta make sure, like we said, keep yourself first, and know that you are vetting these schools. Like, you are vetting the schools. As much as you may feel like it's the other way around, it's actually, you know, you have some power in that situation. So
Absolutely. Awesome. Let's talk about, okay, the transition from high school into college.
Yeah.
Freshman year.
Yes.
What did you expect? What didn't you expect? What was your hardest part? Just talk about your experience.
So, you know, like I said, so my high school coach coached a lot of kids that ended up going and playing at a higher level. She played for Xavier University back in the day.
Okay.
So she was always open and honest with us and said, if you think this is hard, you have no clue. So we always knew it's going to be harder than anything that we've ever done. The hardest part of the transition for me was time management.
Yep.
That was the biggest thing, and I'm glad I came in the summer and took the 2 classes, or the classes I took summer going into college. And I thought, because I've always got good grades, I went to college prep school, like I'm in the top tier over there. I got a C in my first class, and I was in shock.
Devastation.
Shock. My mom was like, "What the hell are you doing?"
What the hell?
I'm like, I studied, but it's a whole different
Type.
level.
Yeah.
And it takes a year. For me, it took a year to fully wrap my head around time management. When am I going to study? When am I going to eat? Am I eating the right things? Okay, I got to go to class. When am I going to take a nap? Am I supposed to be going out?
She could fall asleep on the snap.
On the snap.
Talk about a nap. You hear?
I would go sleep in my car.
I know. You was always
I would
asleep.
sleep. When I moved out of the dorms, I would sleep
Golly.
in my car in between classes.
As soon as the bus took off, as soon as the plane took off, 10 minutes.
Knocked out.
Where AG? Slumped
out.
down in the seat.
Mouth open too. So that was the biggest thing, but it was the hardest thing to get used to.
Okay. Yeah. That's a common one.
It was the hardest thing to get used to. I think everything else everything else as far as weights and the demands, I was expecting it to be ridiculously hard, and it was.
Right. And it was. It lived up to every
expectation that they told me. It was ridiculously hard. But what I'm really happy for is I had a great group of teammates that were constantly like pulling us up, because it was 3 of us freshmen that came in, and we had a great support system when it came to the older girls. Making sure you were good.
Nah, you better come on. Y'all ain't gonna be putting us on the line. Let's go.
Basically, that's how the motivation went.
You better run. That's how the motivation was.
But no, it for me, it made that was just a huge thing for me. Is I don't know if I would have been able to get through it without like my teammates being super supportive, and then having a support system. For me, it was Randa. Outside of like the coaching realm, you need to have somebody that you can go vent to. So if your parents don't live in the same city you're going to school in, you don't always want to go vent to your teammates because they're having as much stuff going on as you.
Yeah.
So whether it be your friend on campus, a teacher, an academic counselor, you have to have somebody to go vent to because it's going to be hard. There's no sugarcoating any of that. If it's not hard, you're at the wrong school. So
that junk should be hard. It ain't gonna be no cakewalk.
Yes, but stick it out your freshman year. That was the biggest part. That was the biggest part for me. Time management.
Yeah.
I would say the other thing was getting used to eating, like nutrition. that was really tough for me.
Eating right. Yeah, high school we be eating everything.
Yeah.
Popeye chicken, give me 3 biscuits.
Yeah, and
You can't eat like that because you can't run no more. You won't be able to last.
Yes. Seriously. And like, you know, you're doing so much strength and conditioning, and we did weights in high school, but it was light weights.
Right.
You come to college, it's a different beast. And in order to maximize what you're doing, because I was getting frustrated, I was gaining weight. I was getting stronger, but I was gaining weight because I just wasn't, I was so hungry all the time. And
you're saying you wasn't eating the right things?
I wasn't eating the right things, going to Wendy's. You know, I wasn't eating terrible.
Dollar menu.
But I was eating bad enough to where I was like, why am I not seeing what everybody else is getting? Like,
nice. I love it.
You know, drinking a pack of Gatorade a week. And when I say a pack, I mean the 24 pack that we get from the gym. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Okay, athletes, you're hearing it.
Don't do that.
You're hearing it.
You don't really need Gatorade unless you're playing.
Right.
And even then.
Okay.
So, you know, just little things like that. But, you know, luckily we had a nutritionist and all that, and met with her. And she's like, yeah, so no more Gatorade.
Okay.
Don't do that. That's probably why you gained 8 pounds.
Crazy.
But yeah, just have an outlet and know that it's going to be hard. And no matter what school you go to, it's going to be difficult. Make sure you have a good support system.
Absolutely. Yeah.